Hold on to your hats. Before Top Gun Maverick soared and long before Laurie Strode faced Michael Myers again, there was a sequel that dared to revisit a horror icon, Psycho 2. While everyone's busy debating which modern horror flick kicked off the legacy sequel craze, a strong case can be made for this 1983 gem. We're living in a world saturated with legacy sequels, movies that resurrect beloved characters decades after their initial appearances. Think of Tom Cruise's triumphant return as Maverick, a staggering 36 years after the original Top Gun, raking in a cool $1.5 billion worldwide. Or consider the horror genre, practically overflowing with these revisitations. David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy brought Jamie Lee Curtis back as Laurie Strode, initially to massive box office success. Though the final installment sparked some heated debates among fans, more on that later. Then there's Scream 5, a clever blend of legacy sequel and reboot that paved the way for Scream 6. And, of course, the recent Exorcist Believer, attempting to recapture the terror of the original. The question is, where did this trend really begin? Many point to Halloween H20 1998 as the first true legacy sequel. After all, it directly followed the 1978 classic, with Jamie Lee Curtis reprising her role as Laurie Strode 17 years after Halloween 2. Some even suggest Wes Craven's New Nightmare as an early example, though it's arguably more of a meta-commentary on the series, cleverly blurring the lines between fiction and reality. Seriously, if you haven't seen it, track down the 4K version. It's surprisingly ahead of its time. But here's where it gets controversial. I'd argue that the legacy sequel lineage stretches back even further. For my money, the true originator is Psycho 2, released in 1983. Anthony Perkins stepped back into the shoes of Norman Bates a full 23 years after Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece. At the time, Universal's decision to make a sequel to such an iconic film was met with skepticism, even ridicule. How could anyone possibly live up to the master of suspense? And this is the part most people miss. Against all odds, Psycho 2 garnered surprisingly positive reviews and became a box office success. So successful, in fact, that 3 years later, Perkins himself directed Psycho 3, embracing the over-the-top, ultra-violent slasher aesthetic of the 80s. Psycho 2 strikes a delicate balance between the suspenseful atmosphere of Hitchcock's original and the more visceral horror of the era. Directed by the underrated Australian filmmaker Richard Franklin, who also helmed the brilliant thriller Road Games, a Hitchcockian homage akin to Rear Window but with trucks, it's a truly compelling film. Not only does Perkins return, but Vera Miles also reprises her role as Leela Crane, still consumed by avenging her sister Marion's infamous shower scene demise in the original. What makes Psycho 2 so remarkable is its surprisingly sympathetic portrayal of Norman Bates. Released from the mental institution, he's genuinely trying to rebuild his life, but society struggles to forgive his past. Leela orchestrates a plan, sending her daughter, Meg Tilly's Mary, undercover to infiltrate Norman's world and potentially drive him back to madness. However, Mary and the audience finds themselves warming to Norman's vulnerability. When murders begin anew, you genuinely don't want him to be the killer. Perkins infuses the role with a profound pathos, adding layers to his iconic character. Sadly, the Psycho sequel seemed to have faded into obscurity, often dismissed as mere rip-offs. This is a disservice, especially to Psycho 2, which deserves recognition as a truly great film. And what's extra interesting is how it predicted the wave of legacy sequels we'd get many years later. Now, it should be noted that public opinion towards them has changed over the years. In '83, it was considered somewhat sad that Perkins reprised the part, as he'd been shackled by typecasting in the years since the original. Nowadays, legacy sequels are championed and are often considered a kind of crowning glory for an actor later in their career to reprise their classic roles. While not all of them work out, I know a lot of folks wish Mark Hamill's Luke had been given a better send-off in The Last Jedi. people still flock to see them. But Psycho 2's place in the pantheon shouldn't be ignored. It's a fascinating precursor to a trend that continues to dominate Hollywood. So, what do you think? Is Psycho 2 the true genesis of the legacy sequel? Or does that title belong to another film? And how do you feel about the current wave of legacy sequels? Are they a welcome return to familiar territory? Or a sign of Hollywood's creative bankruptcy? Let's discuss in the comments.